Lead. Huh. You're going to Walmart tomorrow?
No, I'm going to go today.
Oh.
This is a little later. Okay. We're out of, unless there's some more out there. Creamy peanut butter. And there's sunflower butter in there.
Man, this was from in April, so Best Buy did was from
Yeah. Staple.
bacon. Canned bacon can last.
Heard of such a thing.
Oh no, you can buy it from Amazon. It's like $20 a can, but you can buy Apocalypse canned bacon,
Wow.
and it lasts for 8 years. People who've tried it say it's pretty bad, but
I would imagine. Black coffee.
Yeah, I read an article that just made me so happy today. QAnon and the Proud Boys are scrambling to figure out what's going on. What's going on? I want to do something, but I don't know why. Yeah.
Because they can't organize.
Well, they're using Telegram.
They're using Telegram?
Yeah.
Like a literal telegram?
No. The app.
Oh.
Some QAnon supporters, a very small minority, are now saying that that they were wrong about today was supposed to be the day that everyone was arrested, all the bad people in our mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, today was that day.
Thought that that Trump was gonna enact martial law.
Get a second term and arrest all the baddies in the cabal. And now some of them are saying small minorities have gone good. They've either saying we can do, which is really good. That means they're one step away from being deprogrammed. Or some aren't as good, but it's not as bad. Take what you can get. Say that maybe it wasn't Trump, it was Biden who's supposed to defeat the cabal. Of course, Biden's going to disagree because he's not crazy.
Right.
But a very small minority. Some still believe that Trump's going to rule as like this giant puppet master and slowly try and take down the cabal. He's ascended to something beyond the president. Oh shoot.
Oh. Do what I showed you earlier and like tap it all the way around on the counter. Yeah, do it.
Just like what?
Yeah, just like that. Yeah, just circle it around. That's the signal. in a hot dog pack and a completely different number of hot dog buns
To get you to have more money.
in the hot dog. Yeah, it's like, well, I think there's more. There are more hot dog buns than there are hot dogs in a pack.
Get you to buy more hot dogs. Like I
They're
said-
just not, they aren't the same.
Like I said, it's all big food stuff.
I didn't realize you were still putting your sandwich together.
That is a fun name for a conspiracy, though. You gotta admit, right?
What?
Big food stuffs.
Yeah.
I'm gonna spread the crunchy stuff this all peanut, like the actual peanuts yet. I like the crunchy stuff better, except for the small aspects.
I don't mind crunchy peanut butter, but that candy, so I'll never buy it. I guess your mom doesn't eat it.
I don't know. Maybe
Strike me as a all natural. That's
I don't think she really likes peanut butter, maybe. But I mean, the two main ingredients are roasted peanuts and sugar, so maybe it's the sugar thing. Cheese is like weird. Like 30 meals a day, there's supposed to be some variation. Where it's all there is. I can only tell the difference between breakfast and lunch and dinner. In breakfast, it's like kale and eggs and bread.
the only thing that I've ever seen your mom eat has always been in the plastic containers where like it's just a bunch of stuff all mixed together.
Yeah.
It always smells really good though.
You think it smells good? Really?
Yeah.
It always smells really bad.
Well, anything I've ever smelled, it always smelled like curries and stuff like that.
Spices, but
And I always, just from like, I mean, she would have it open from a distance, like from as close as I am to your sandwich. And I'm like, God, that smells good.
maybe I'm smelling the gefilte fish and the cooked vegetables.
It's not like, the vegetables. What was the other thing?
Gefilte fish.
What's that?
I'm not sure if it's like an actual species of fish, or if it's just the Yiddish word for a specific type.
Oh, that's that stuff that you always see over in the kosher section. I didn't know how you pronounced it. Gefilte fish? Gefilte fish. I was curious about it, but I've never had it.
I think it's a big market for kosher fish since kosher fish.
With my bad, like, oh, they let Tiger King out.
Truck limousine?
They have like a SUV limousine waiting on them. I'm gay. I'm broke ass shit. Oh, well, he's thinking of, he's got Netflix now. Not making money on that. His attorney had a pickup truck limousine waiting on his ass outside the jail. My dad called me. like we've been in an abusive relationship for 4 years.
Republicans or Donald Trump?
Donald Trump specifically, and his.
One reason I don't like Donald Trump, and I know there are many.
Just one?
Was that with all his stupid antics, what's really going on, which is his blatant
Just, it was all enveloped.
by his tweets.
Yeah.
What?
got a lot of work to do. She haven't done anything this week.
Oh,
Haven't done anything since like last Thursday.
oh no!
And then I reviewed the other one, and I redid my unit test. I only got a 6 this time. I brought it up, I just got 100, but I got 92, and now I have a 93.1. So I might ask my chemistry teacher for another retake later on.
I pull my shirt on, walk out the door. I pull my shirt on, walk out the door. Walking across the campus.
Yes, that title is not clickbait. If you have an original Xbox and haven't addressed this critical problem, it is likely corroding and dissolving as we speak, slowly being destroyed from the inside out. Most Xboxes out there up until the very last 1.6 revision were manufactured with critically flawed components that are in essence a ticking time bomb for your Xbox. And as the systems reach 15, 20 years old, we're starting to see the catastrophic effects of those components failing. But luckily, this is entirely preventable with basically no electronics knowledge. In this video, I'll explain what the problem is and then show you how to fix it for good. Have you ever noticed that a lot of computers and electronics contain a small coin battery? If you're wondering what it does, it's almost always there to keep track of time if the device is ever unplugged from AC power. See, if there's no power in a computer, there's no way for it to keep counting the seconds as time passes. So, inevitably when power is restored, the time will be wrong and have to be reset manually. The choice is either forcing users to reset the clock every time your computer loses power, or have some kind of backup power to keep the clock going with no AC. Now, if you're an Xbox owner, you're probably intimately familiar with this screen on boot, and thinking to yourself, well, clearly the Xbox doesn't use a battery in that case. And you're absolutely right, it doesn't. But you also probably know that it can keep time for a little bit when it's unplugged. Somewhere around 3 to 5 hours, generally speaking. So how's it doing this, and why didn't they just use a battery? The answer comes to us from one of the OG Xbox hackers, Andrew Bunny Huang MCPX. The MCPX is a big chip with a lot of varied responsibilities. As such, it takes a fair bit of power to keep it alive, even just for the clock circuitry. Which is fine when it's plugged into AC, but not if you're trying to run it off a standard coin battery. Bunny measured the battery could every time the battery was already dead before it lasted more than 60 days maximum. This means the battery could be already dead before it even left the store shelves. Obviously that's out of the question. Why every time sorted out? Are people gonna have to set the clock every time they unplug their Xboxes and take them to their friends' houses? Well, Microsoft decided there was a compromise. While it may be infeasible to put any sort of long-lasting battery in there, maybe we could put some other kind of rechargeable power source in. It wouldn't keep time for very long, but it really provide powerful battery. It's a main take it somewhere else and plug it back in. Introducing the capacitor! A mainstay in electrical circuits and essentially a really small battery. It could theoretically recharge and circuit while the Xbox is plugged in and provide power to our hungry boy for a few hours after unplugging. Now, capacitors usually don't last all that long, so we'll be using a cutting-edge one designed for high storage capacity called the PowerStore Aerogel. Yes, somehow building in a high-end aerogel capacitor was cheaper than not including the clock circuitry in the MCBX. But in theory, unlike a battery, a capacitor would never have to be removed or replaced. Or at least, that's probably what they thought. Unbeknownst to Microsoft and most hardware manufacturers of the early 2000s, they were right in the middle of capacitor plague, an epidemic of poorly made electrolytic capacitors with a propensity to leak corrosive acid all over the board and surrounding electronics. Not only does this acid eat away at the surrounding metal, so like everything, it's also conductive and can lead to dangerous short circuits. Yikes. And as cutting edge as the clock capacitor was, it could not escape capacitor plague. Now, 15 plus years down the road, if your clock cap hasn't at least started leaking, you're considered very lucky. And many are wreaking havoc on the boards as we speak, hence the urgent tone of this video. So, the only question is, pretty bad. My new one of this, by the way, reading with, if you've never opened an Xbox, took the one out of mine, he's got a mod warranty. This is actually a friend's Xbox that I'm demonstrating with since I already took the one out of mine. He's got a mod chip installed, which is why there's this front panel here. If you've never opened an Xbox before, it's not immediately clear how to get it open. That's because the 6 screws holding the case together are hidden underneath stickers and the rubber feet on the bottom. Peel up the rubber feet to expose 4 of the 6 screws. The other 2 are underneath each of these stickers, requiring you to either damage or remove them to take apart the Xbox. This is by design, as this would indicate to Microsoft whether your warranty was valid or not. Unfortunately, you will have to live with permanently scarring your Xbox to save it. As you can see, this one's sticker was already removed since it needed to be opened to install the mod chip. After removing all 6 screws from the bottom, turn it back over and with some encouragement, the top should lift right off. Here you can see the CD drive and hard drive. The motherboard is underneath, so we'll need to remove both of these too. There are 3 Torx T10 screws holding these down, 1 in the middle holding down the hard drive and 2 down the bottom holding down the CD drive. We'll remove the hard drive first, unplug the IDE and power cables. The power cable can sometimes get stuck, I often use pliers to help get it out. Then we just need to unscrew the screw in the middle. After unrouting the power cable most of the way, the hard drive tray should lift out, allowing you to finish unrouting it and set it aside. The CD drive also has 2 cables in the back, but these are generally easier to remove. Then take out the 2 screws holding the DVD drive down. The clock capacitors. This is, by the way, the mod chip he had installed this board. It's time to inspect the capacitors. This is, by the way, the mod chip he had installed. This probably won't be in your Xbox. The clock capacitor is down here towards the front left. Once again, the one that has PowerStore Aerogel written on the side. Thankfully, there's no visible leaking, so there likely isn't any damage to the board. But believe me, we cannot trust this capacitor and definitely need to take it out. Now, since we just want it gone, you can actually just bend it back and forth with your fingers until it snaps off. Personally, I'm going to do it a little cleaner by desoldering it, but of course you can do it whichever way you want. Desoldering will require unscrewing the board to get to the underside. Several T10 screws hold this down, as well as several cables, but they all come out fairly easily, after which the board should lift right out. I don't have any fancy desoldering equipment, so I'm just going to do the tried and true heating one leg at a time and pulling up on it. Sure enough, this gets it out pretty quickly. Inspecting the bottom of the capacitor, it's clear that acid was indeed starting to leak out. And you can also see some on the board where the capacitor was sitting. Damn, it's a really good thing we're getting this out now. Let me reiterate, you cannot be too careful with this capacitor. It really is best to just get rid of it as soon as possible. Luckily, the fluid didn't spread too much, but I'll clean it up with some alcohol just in case. I've read people recommending vinegar to clean up, assuming that the fluid is actually basic as opposed to acidic, but that isn't confirmed as far as I know, which is why I've decided to play it safe with alcohol. Feel free to do your own research into this, however. And with that, our job is pretty much done, but I'm gonna go one step further. When I was removing the clock capacitor from my own Xbox, I noticed that these 3 capacitors near the CPU were leaking a ton. Thankfully not onto the board, but that gross brown paste had started bursting out from the top. It turns out the clock capacitor wasn't the only low quality cap that Microsoft used. These 3 are Nichicon HM series capacitors that from 2001 to 2004, well within the Xbox's lifespan, were notoriously defective and prone to popping or leaking. Thankfully these do seem fine, but once again I don't want to take any chances. I'm going to desolder these and replace them with brand new capacitors of the same spec. For reference, they are 3300 microfarad and 6.3 volt capacitors. And here are the new ones. They're actually a little bit smaller just due to technology advancing over time. Unfortunately, I didn't get any usable footage of soldering them in, but here they are done, all fresh and new. And with that, we can breathe a sigh of relief.
Okay, that's all the
capacitors known to be defective in the Microsoft Xbox.
This Xbox will continue to live, hopefully, for a long time yet. It's time to button it up and call it a day. Alright, let's test it out. And good, it still works. Oh yeah, the BIOS animation is different. A lot of these mod chips let you do that, which is kind of cool. Well, there we go. This Xbox is ready for hopefully the next 50. So, description for a tutorial on how to do just that. If your Xbox is not a 1.6, I would definitely recommend opening it up and getting rid of that clock capacitor. Cleaning up any acid that may or may not have leaked out already. You don't have to do any soldering like I did. You don't have to replace those other 3 capacitors if they seem fine. It really is just getting rid of that clock capacitor before it does too much harm. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Subscribe to Mac KC.
Previously on
Mac KC.
I'm not giving up, but in the interest of getting something out there, I've decided to end this video here, and when we meet again... Yep, we're finally doing it. Must have been a whole fucking year, Jesus Christ. If you haven't seen the first part, well, you should, but I'll recap anyway. My goal was to build the fastest machine I could with parts that still officially supported Windows 98, picking from a tiny window of time at the tail end of hardware manufacturers supporting it. Yep, this is all about finding the fastest hardware we can. After all, this idea all came from trying to run 98 on a modern laptop, naturally finding all sorts of driver support issues, and wondering how new a fully supported 98 machine could be. So that's what we're here to find out. Fast anyway took start with and score well into the area. Looking back, I ended up kind of impulse buying the first one I found that met that criteria, which looking back was probably a mistake. I think the motherboard I chose was kind of crap, especially when it came to its 98 support. This time I've been a little bit more choosy. Our criteria is still largely the same, as much as I wanted to ditch AGP. A lot of you guys expressed no surprise that a lot of my AGP cards were dead, saying that AGP cards are pretty notorious for dying, especially even still AGP internally. Even the PCIe version just uses an AGP to PCIe bridge chip on the card, so there's absolutely no benefit to using the PC. Only does 4 or in the day. It's compatible with every 775 CPU. This list on Vogons, which was a super valuable resource for this project, shows that a lot of 775 motherboards with AGP had a Pentium 4 rather than a Core 2 of some kind, and well, this is turns out that rare to track one down a computer part. Bought one from also for the motherboard I'd chosen to show up somewhere locally. I eventually bit the mid-March in April. So yeah, if not for that, I haven't kept it, arrived 6 cool listings just to see if I could get one any sooner, but alas, it took straight Zeus Windows 98 compatible chip board I chose is new and see out of course anymore. Speaking of which, we say that this will be the to manufacture, but specifically to run old software. Either that or these components were really cheap to manufacture. But I think with this, we can pretty confidently say that this will be the fastest 98 PC that you can build. Speaking of which, let's talk CPUs. Since we're no longer restricted to Pentium 4s anymore, let's go all out. This time I've chosen an Intel Core 2 Duo E8600 running at 3.33 GHz of those notoriously inefficient. In fact, you could argue the only reason their clock speeds were so high is because they were so inefficient. A better way to compare is with benchmarks, a kind of real-world performance test. And looking at single-threaded performance only for our very single-threaded Windows 98, the 8600 doesn't just benchmark faster than our old Pentium 4, it's in fact the fastest benchmarking single-core performance of any Socket 775 CPU. I had initially considered fixing the dead 6800 Ultra I had last time, but I'm really no expert in component level repair, particularly Ultimate. But hear me out, the rare still the FX 5200. I actually did intend to do this last getting to fix, so we all that. People have no excuse for this. I guess my caveman brain is so minus doesn't how my computer builds almost never. No. I've already met this card and the 12 volt first time. The first try. You know, it's kind of like programming. It's almost more suspicious if it does work the first time. I checked all the usual suspects, reseated the memory, the graphics card, and the 12 volt power rail. This board actually has integrated graphics, so I tried that too, but nothing was getting it to boot. God, wouldn't it suck if I spent this long waiting for this specific motherboard and it just turned out to be dead? But as I was looking things up about this motherboard, I spotted something. Something I probably should have seen a long time ago. A list of compatible CPUs for this motherboard. And guess what? The E8600 was nowhere on it. Well, I'm glad I got this death cable in the last video. I may have some use for it after all. I felt like there was still maybe a chance though. The latest BIOS update says it supports new CPUs, with a link to a page that doesn't exist anymore. So maybe this board just has an old BIOS and the website is badly maintained? Update the CPU another Pentium. Unfortunately, I already sold the Pentium 4 from the last video, so I had to salvage another Pentium 4 from this other PC. It's okay, it was a junk system anyway. Changing the CPU was easier said than done. The heatsink is screwed down with these toolless nuts, but it's hard to reach it. The new CPU to me. Okay, the startup screen, so let's flash still in. I know it works, but then it drive file, and I didn't have a floppy drive. From there was that then being on, which means I 100 became, of course, I had everything. I did look at what my options were as far as replacement motherboards. I looked at pretty much every motherboard left that still fit the criteria, and you know what? None of them supported the E8600. It was just too new for this class of motherboard. With that in mind, I stuck with this one and decided to downgrade CPUs. Luckily, Core 2 Duos are not rare, so I could actually make a local purchase for once in my goddamn life. This is the Intel Core 2 Duo E6600. Is it the fastest 775? No. Is it the fastest Core 2 Duo? No. Is it even the fastest CPU that this motherboard can handle? No, that goes to the much rarer Core 2 Extreme X6800. But it's not far behind, and I just don't error Core 2 Extreme X6800. But it's not far behind, and I just don't have the patience to spend a fortune. and wait another 6 months for a rare CPU to arrive from Uzbekistan or wherever. So this is the combo I've settled on, and given the limitations, I'm happy with what we've got. It was time to install Windows 98, and